Oy, 2023. This year will certainly go down in my books as one of the more frustrating in my lifetime. While I can't say I was overcome with some of the worst of life's hurdles thrown at me, it certainly felt like I got to accomplish so very little during it, and my lack of content on this channel over the past 14 months is Exhibit A in this case. The closest net positive I can think of for this year is that, for the most part, I got to tick off a lot of games I'd either been meaning to complete, or simply properly check out for the first time. And so I figured that if I'm going to be making a comeback, it would probably be best if my first video be one that I feel most comfortable doing, and that is basically me rambling on about games I really enjoyed during my hiatus. Now, despite there being plenty of great games this year that I would easily recommend to many of you all, I decided to keep this video focused strictly on those games that truly meant the most to me this year and hadn't exactly gotten the attention I think they deserve. So if you haven't decided yet, yes, Spider-Man 2, Tears of the Kingdom, Jedi Survivor are really great games that I think you should play. And that's all I have to say here. As I've talked about before, I know these videos aren't exactly the ones to bring in tons of views, but as I've come to learn, they do help me in getting to open up more and share some important games that have affected me one way or another, and getting the opportunity to shed some light on them, especially the more low budget ones, helps me out more than you may think. So here they are, some great games for you all to check out right now. To start off with, I want to cover a game that's probably one of the smallest on here, but is still one of the most charming and fun ones I got a hold of. Lunistis is a return to the low poly linear 3D platformers of the 90s, with the one twist that, unlike many from the time, this one actually holds up very well. You play as a tanuki named Hana, whose objective is simply to reach the end goal to each level, all while maneuvering enemies and hazards as you collect paper cranes and letters spelling out your name along the way. Each world is split into 2 levels and comes with new environmental mechanics that keep things consistently fresh while also testing the players even further. To those of you who have played most basic linear platformers back in the day, from the likes of Donkey Kong Country and Crash Bandicoot, a lot of what I just said probably resurfaced a memory or two, and yeah, on paper this game isn't the most unique concept, even with its quirky style harkening back to an era of low poly models. But counterpoint, if the game is fun, who cares, and this game is hella fun. The platforming is both smooth and balanced right, the environments along with each one's music just pops. And while yes, even when you add on the time spent from dying over and over again in the split paths that lead to each letters tile, this game can be beaten incredibly fast, but hey, at the price they're asking for, it's easily worth it. A few years back, I found myself playing Danganronpa for the first time and quickly fell in love with the series, leading me to make one of my all-time favourite videos. Shortly after, I got recommended another series from its merged publisher with the Zero Escape series, which I also loved and possibly might be in the process of doing a video on presently. And after absorbing that series, this year I decided to take a look at its creator Kotaro Uechi Koshi's latest IP, AI The Somnium Files. Set in a near future Tokyo, you play as Kamine Date, a detective trying to uncover the murder of your best friend's wife and mother to your sort of adopted daughter. Thanks to its eyeball AI assistant, rather cleverly named Aiba, along with other tech provided by ABIS, the Advanced Brain Investigation Squad, Date is able to use a form of interrogation known as syncing, in which you are given 6 minutes to dive into a suspect's dreams and reveal the truth each suspect is hiding, all while discovering more from their past. During these events, you can find points in which the flow of the narrative can split within the story, radically deviating in ways similar to Uechi Koshi's past works. In a way, much of this game is textbook Uechi Koshi, with the cast of memorable characters each hiding personal secrets to uncovering mysteries that have you looking back on previous events a lot differently, and of course player choices that will drastically change the flow of events in some way. I won't sugarcoat it though that despite all that, gameplay comes in very short bursts, with it certainly mostly coming around the game's syncing sequences, in which you need to find ways to slow down the clock before 6 minutes are up, along with looking for evidence and the occasional QuickTime events that pop up. So if you're someone who can get a little frustrated when there's not enough player input throughout, this may be a hard game to sell some of you on. But speaking as someone who loves a good mystery and doesn't always mind having most of our gameplay consist of asking questions and clicking around various environments, I had a great time seeing the cast interact with one another and got more than a few laughs from both the dialogue and situations. While I don't think the multi-layered story's atmosphere and gameplay managed to stand on even ground with the entire Zero Escape series, at the very least the animation and dubbing is leagues ahead of Zero Time Dilemma. I would also say that if you're a newcomer to these types of twisting narratives, chances are you're likely to find this game to be a lot more digestible compared to the rabbit hole that is Zero Escape. If you're a fan of murder mysteries, especially those that try to add in a dash of sci-fi to things, then this is is a good time awaiting. I've yet to have picked up its recent sequel, AI, The Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative. If it is more of the same, then honestly, as long as the mystery and characters remain just as intriguing, then I'm fine with them not making too many big changes. At first glance, Humanity may seem as if it's all visuals with gameplay appearing somewhere between the lines, but I found this game to be a truly fascinating and creative puzzle game that I have not seen in a long time. This game is something different, and like some of the more special games out there, I do encourage players to go in mostly blind so as to not spoil some of the latter content. You're cool. But for those of you who would still like a bit more context as to what this game is about, the game could be described as a more advanced and visually pleasing Lemmings, but with a few surprises here and there. You as the player is represented as this dog who is having to herd lines of endless humans towards specific end goals that will have them ascend. From the start, you'll be using simple commands to move in either direction while they're on the move, but soon enough you'll find yourself in control of new commands, all the while being faced with many new hurdles and hazards. What's more, on many occasions additional rules will be applied, like not being able to drop commands once a level has started, or having to work with a set amount of commands or beings. These will most definitely try to test your brain, with most levels including bonus objectives wherein you'll need to try and collect and herd these golden giants towards the end goals as well, with them going towards fun cosmetics and other bonuses. This game snowballs in a way that will surprise you, especially when you start to reach the latter chapters, and the fact that it's such a treat for the eyes really helps to hold your attention as you anticipate what new and original puzzles will follow next. A game that I've been very much looking forward to finally coming out at last is the classic RPG pixel throwback game Sea of Stars from Sabotage Studio, the same developer behind 2018's The Messenger. Like their previous outings, this title serves as a love letter to an era that many feel was long forgotten in today's mainstream gaming landscape, but manages to breathe new life into it while still keeping many of the core tentpoles that made games of this ilk so beloved in the first place. In it, we play as a group of heroes set on your classic quest to save the world from some evil godlike being. I will admit that the details are kind of irrelevant early, there's not much of an inciting incident. While the gameplay is a return to your classic turn-based RPGs from the 80s and early 90s, there are opportunities for you to either doubling your attack or weakening those of your enemies by syncing button presses on point of impact, allowing for much more engagement. It doesn't completely reinvigorate one of the biggest hurdles in an RPG, that being keeping every fight interesting and well-paced, but it does keep things more engaging thanks as well to earning MP in live manner through normal attacks and being able to cancel powerful enemy abilities by attacking with specific weapon types and elements. Of course, one can't forget to mention just how beautiful the game looks from its backgrounds, character designs, and animations that just ooze personality. Had 3D graphics not set the norm for games by the late 90s, I could easily see a developer try to bring a world of this beauty to life decades sooner. I'm still a ways into the game for now, and I will add that I wish there was more customization and/or unlocking of new powers as you progress, whether through leveling up party members or gear they have equipped. That being said, I do appreciate the lack of any need to grind or overcomplicate things by stacking on more gameplay mechanics that could potentially bloat the game. Either way, just the overall personality from this game is more than enough to carry me to the very end. Not all great games that I played recently were ones to come out in the last couple of years. A game series that I wasn't sure I was going to get along with as much as I did was the creative yet widely neglected PlayStation franchise that is Gravity Rush. Originally created for the PlayStation Vita, due to it being one of the few standout titles during its brief lifespan, we thankfully got a remaster of the original game alongside a sequel both on console. When I technically started out with Gravity Rush 2, I decided to hold off a bit and try my hand at the original first, despite me hearing grumblings about some issues still being present in the remaster. You play as Kat, an amnesiac girl who awakens in Hexville, a city wherein each of its districts are suspended above utter nothingness by a pillar forever reaching the sky and whatever remains below it. Somehow, thanks to a cat named Dusty, Kat, with a K, is able to control the flow of gravity around her, which she uses to both aid the civilians of Hexville, fight the discount Heartless known as Nevi, as well as uncovering the mystery behind her power and the link between her and another gravity shifter known as Raven. The main pull to the game, pun intended, is of course the way in which gravity is used to traverse the world and fight off enemies. This is not exactly a simple mechanic to use when, say, compared to swinging around New York as Spider-Man, but after playing the game for a short period of time, as well as upgrading vital stats like gauge usage and recovery time, you'll be moving around so freely you'll only have a few minor hiccups to deal with on occasion. Sadly, while traversing can become a real joy early on, combat doesn't flow as naturally, mostly due to the lack of a lock-on for the melee attack and chaining combos, along with static field ability being finicky on multiple occasions. Despite there being a decent number of options on how to attack, you'll be spamming dive kicks non-stop in most fights. Some of you may ask, with these rather clear-cut issues, why I chose to focus on this game in this video, and that's mostly because I never realised how much of this underlooked IP checks so many boxes of mine. I love the mystery surrounding this odd world, the art direction is really detailed, and the use of colour to better characterise each of the city districts is handled in a way that manages to mask some of the technical shortcomings of the Vita. The characters and story come with tons of personalities, with even the comic book style cutscenes managing to not feel cheap like they can in some other games I can think of. The music should also be recognised for the swell of emotions they can produce, whether it be from each of the districts or when the action kicks in. It's got its problems, some very clear ones that's for sure, but very few games can allow for this kind of thrill as you screw with the rules of reality. One game that came out this year that I have ever so slowly ended up progressing through was the newest entry to the Final Fantasy series with Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. As I've talked about before, Final Fantasy is a series that means a lot to me, despite still having many key entries that I have yet to have crossed off or even properly started. Despite some uncharted territory, however, the music across the franchise is still some of the most iconic through gaming, regardless of it coming from the old school 8-bit and 16-bit eras, the jump to CD-ROMs, to even the not so universally beloved entries from the last 2 decades. Having missed out on the original Theatrhythm and its sequel due to not being much of a handheld gamer back then, I was glad to finally get the opportunity to play it at last, especially with there now being 15 main entries to draw from, 16 now as of June, not to mention the heaps of spin-offs and occasional sequels to go along with them as well. Mechanically, the game is rather easy to understand, with players hitting notes to songs as they approach. Different formats are used, however, depending on what its song is based around, with the fast-paced battle and boss tracks landing in the battle category, while environmental and character themes landing in the field category. There are also event songs that you're rewarded with that simply let you play the most popular song from each title with a montage of cutscenes in the background. From the outside, this may look like your average rhythm game using Guitar Hero as a template, which it kind of is, but they do attempt to add a bit of RPG-ness with you being able to select popular Final Fantasy characters for your party and equipped abilities that will better determine how well your party is doing against certain enemies, assuming you're landing every note. I certainly wouldn't call it the most engrossing part of the game, as naturally your attention is squarely locked onto the incoming notes, and it's mostly just there for the multiplayer mode and for those who want to try and complete every bonus objective. The game includes quest mode in which you journey up each game unlocking songs as you make your way towards each title's final boss. Those, however, who aren't too keen on slowly unlocking each song can sneakily unlock many early on by picking one of the few suggested ones at the end of each song played while in free play mode. Like I said, this series has meant a lot to me, so naturally getting to feel as if I'm actually playing some of these songs was a blast, especially considering my lack of musical talent. Admittedly, some of the earliest Final Fantasy game tunes could drag a bit due to their repetitive nature, especially when it comes to songs like the original Chocobo theme that loops every 7 seconds. There's also sadly isn't the option to switch over to the updated versions to some of these tracks, but that's just me. Also, putting songs like Melody of Life and Xanakin behind Day 1 DLC was a dirty move on Square's part, but I guess what do you expect by this point? At the time of this video, I'm still trying to get through each title's quest, but I'm happy to keep up this routine of revisiting this game once every month or so to remind me of my love for these adventures and tunes within them. And for those of you who are wondering why this and not the other more monumental Final Fantasy game to come out in 2023 was the one I chose to cover in this video, all I'll say is for now, tune back in like a couple of months or so. I got a feeling there's a potential future video brewing. And finally, I want to talk about a game that a friend of mine had been recommending to me for a while now, and that is the charming and colourful in many ways adventure game Chicory: A Colourful Tale. In it, you play as a cleaner, named after your favourite food, who, after accidentally joining the world of its colour, decides to borrow the legendary magical brush from its current master, Chicory, with you soon learning not only of a corrupt power that is affecting the land, but also that the role of the brush master has become too much for Chicory, who has recently been doubting their role and becoming trapped in their own negative thoughts. The key gameplay structure to this game comes from you getting to control the brush so as to use its power to colour the world back in again, however you feel like. Though the game does have you use it to interact with the world in ways that help you explore further, the real joy comes from just painting environments in your own special way. The game will purposely only give you 4 colours to choose from per area, but you'd be surprised how much creativity can come from being limited. Plus, bit of a mild spoiler, but they do provide a way to you to get around this much later in the game. You also have tons of treasures to find along the way, along with side quests from inhabitants that can net you new clothing options along a variety of brush styles. As you progress through the story, you'll unlock new powers to move about, such as glow-in-the-dark paint and being able to swim through paint akin to the Inklings from Splatoon. You can tell the game's creator, Greg Lobanov, sees the importance in art therapy and how it's the process, not the overall quality of the outcome that matters. Chicory, the game's goal, is to just allow you to feel free and relaxed as you bring life back to this world, but it also goes beyond by telling a really compelling story that touches heavily when it comes to those like myself who often doubt themselves and feel trapped by our own negative thoughts. Puzzles and platforming are also creative in how they utilize your brush and its powers. Even though I can see some people finding certain sections more difficult than others might, I still recommend this game for even the most casual players, though with the added advice to maybe go into the accessibility options so as to allow you to skip the boss fights, as I can easily see some finding it to go against the calming nature of the game, regardless of how it ties into the emotional experience that was constructed. This game, along with so many others I got to experience for the first time last year, was a great treat that continues to remind me of the creative wonder and genius that developers are still putting out today as they were over 10 years ago. Sadly, we do have to see the occasional nuisance from the industry, most egregious the lack of responsibility and care towards those who have been forced out due to matters that they had almost zero hand in, just so the bigwigs can lessen a financial implosion just beyond the horizon without having to lighten the load on their parts. This industry wouldn't be the entertainment juggernaut that it is without the many artists, writers, testers, and so many more who have contributed to the many great games to come out last year, not to mention the last 50 before it. 2024 will be a special year for this channel, as it will mark the 10-year anniversary since my first ever upload, which admittedly was only then followed up on half a year later, but regardless, I want to really take things further, and repeating my strategy from last year is most certainly not the way I plan to be moving forward. There are times I do worry that by uploading these smaller videos, I'm just reminding you of how inactive I've been since the last time you caught one of my videos, instead of putting out something that could rival H-Bomberguy's next juggernaut of an event. I apologize, and I can only hope that 24 is still my lucky number for a reason. Thank you all for watching, and I hope ever so much to continue seeing you more throughout this year and beyond.